and welcome to Season 3 of SustainAPod, the youth-led podcast for young people and anyone interested in the very multi-dimensional world of sustainability. I'm Belinda, and I'll be your host for today's episode, where we'll be talking about a very, very timely topic, wellness. Now, wellness undoubtedly as an individual pursuit has been very strongly emphasized now at the societal level as we continue to live with the COVID-19 pandemic 2 years on. And wellness to me is very much linked to sustainability, as the well-being of people is a very key component of a more sustainable future. So I'm honored to have Julina Halim with me today to explore this fascinating topic. Julina wears many, many hats. She's a nutritionist, a wellness coach, a tango teacher, and a co-founder, to name a few. And I've been privileged enough to hear Julina share her insights at the Kids for Kids 2022 Youth Summit, and just had to bring her on here for all of you listeners. So thank you, Julina, for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Belinda. You've been very kind. It's really a privilege to be able to be here speaking with everyone.
Fantastic. So let's just kick it off then. What do you think wellness means to you personally?
Okay. This for me have changed so many years in different phases in my life, right? I've been in the wellness industry. I've probably been in health promotion for a little bit, about 25 years now. We've been through different trends, different fitness trends, different diet trends, and so many things evolved. But at this point in time, I've concluded actually to something really, really simple. It's just really how you feel waking up towards your day in the morning. Do you feel energetic towards it? Are you excited about the day ahead of you? And throughout the day, are you able to do the things you want with some degree of positivity, some energy? And there will be ups and downs, but in general, let's say 70 to 80% of the time, you're a go-getter. You want to go do what you want to do, right? And you're able to do it. And going to bed being happy and fulfilled about the day. And that's really all it is. It's about living your everyday, being able to do what you want to do.
I love that you're breaking it down into something very, like, just on a daily basis. It doesn't sound really challenging to do, and it sounds really simple. So could you please share with us the key components of wellness, which I absolutely love, and literally written it down on a post-it right now, actually, for our audience.
Me too. Well, it's lovely to hear that you have to do that, because there are tons and millions of definition of wellness, right? WHO has its thing, but I think what to me it really means is that you have to be able to make it real in your life. It has to be something that's practical to you, something that you could do, and by making it real, I've also kind of pushed it a little bit step forward and breaking it down into the four components. My making it real means the REAL, and R stands for rest well. Are you able to manage your stress? Are you able to have quality sleep? Are you able to have downtime, me time, and the waking rest moments, right? Next is E, which is eat whole. What percentage of your diet completes wholesome food, real food, food as it is, as opposed to ultra processed foods that comes in packagings with a list of ingredients that you can't read or pronounce. And A, active, to stay active. Are you active during the day? Do you move around a lot? Are you active in your community? Are you participative in life, in your family? And the last thing is to live fearlessly. Are you able to get up and go facing obstacles? Are you able to pursue your dreams and goals? Do you have interests and hobbies that takes you out of your comfort zone? Are you ready to go out there and live life? And also there will be obstacles in life, and how quickly you bounce back. And are you able to bring your tribe with you? All right. So that's, to me, it's really important. The REAL, rest well, eat whole, stay active, and live fearlessly. And then the next step is how to make that into a part of your life, how to make it real for you and not something that Julina says.
Yeah, that's really great. And I think something that I really want to add with these four components as well is how interlinked they are. So what I found at least is being more well rested makes me more likely to keep on having more whole foods and healthy foods, whereas if I'm tired, I'll crave more sugary snacks, for example. So I really love the way that you've categorized it. So something that I've experienced recently is actually a bit of long COVID. And so I really experienced the link between the mental and the physical component of health and wellness. So could you share more about these linkages and why it's important that we recognize and work on these linkages between the two, like the mind and the body?
Well, that's really, really interesting because this whole mind and body interconnection becomes such a big topic in the past years. And of course, with the last 3 years with COVID, but it's so interlinked and so fascinating. And let's start with how the body knows what to do, right? Every action, every chemical reaction, every feeling that we have are guided by hormones. Hormones are the little signaling factors telling each part of your body, your organs, your brain, your emotions, what to do and what happens inside the body. And what are the hormones influenced by? Firstly, they are, yes, absolutely influenced by food. Whatever we eat, whatever we take into our body becomes the raw material, becomes the signaling component, becomes cofactors to support the chemical reactions in the body. And they work with each other, everything you eat. And then you can extend that into everything we're exposed to in our environment. The chemicals we're exposed to, the paint in your house, the plastic you use in your food containers, and all of that. Those, again, on top of the food, they also become influencing factors. Your body absorbs them. They're chemical compounds. Your body responds with them. And then how you move, again, cardiovascular system, musculoskeletal system, to be able to generate movements and after movement, there's, again, tons of reaction going on in the body. So again, how you move affects how you feel. And then how well you rest. Rest is when your body recuperates, when your body recovers. So these components keep working with one another. And all that influence is how your hormones respond. So if you don't rest well, like you said, or if we were ill, your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system are the balance between that is affected. So if you're staying in a long-term stress, which means your sympathetic system is doing the overworking, and that will signal your gut that it has to shut down digestive function, it has to shut down reproductive function, it has to shut down immune function to keep you going, to be able to deal with the stress that you need to deal with. Right? So there's that loop always. Your body's going, okay, what do I need to deal with now? And now what we find is and because of that, your emotion and your whole responses are a two-way street. And we call it we call it parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, enteric nervous system. Everything happened in the autonomic nervous system realm. And there's this realm of gut-brain connection that goes between what's happening in your gut, what you eat, and how your gut responses, how your enteric nervous system responses, and how that affects your brain and vice versa. How you feel affects how you digest. What food you digest, how you digest affects how you feel. And most importantly, the two big components that's being studied right now is a big part of serotonin, which is your feel-good hormone, is produced by your gut. And secondly, the microbiomes, the balance of the microbiota in your gut, the bacteria in your gut also makes a difference. Two-way street again. How can we influence that? How much can we influence that? What exactly can we influence that? It's still being studied right now, but you see a lot of therapeutic approaches are taking this route. And lastly, I think we've also been seeing evidences supporting how cancer and a lot of chronic illnesses are associated with pure stress emotions. So how much of our emotion can influence our physical health, or is it the other way around? We're already seeing a lot more evidences than what we knew 25 years ago when I got out of school. I'm sure there will be more, which will help us in creating ways for interventions, for therapies, and for prevention.
Wow, that That is fascinating. And my two takeaways from that is, first of all, how much we need to appreciate what our bodies actually do for us. It's such a complicated system that's designed to keep us in a healthy state. And so I really think the body needs more credit in terms of what they do. And second of all, being really in tune with our emotions, like that is so much more important than what I initially thought. And I think people, on the surface level, they might be like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm not stressed. I'm doing all my exercise. I'm sleeping." But actually, really being in tune with, maybe is there subconsciously stressors that are activating parasympathetic system. I think that's also really important. So going back to what you were mentioning before about the importance of the environment, I would love to kind of hear your thoughts on what people are saying at the moment are very key to tackling the current climate crisis in terms of what we're eating. So the first topic is on plant-based diets, because that has been regarded as a very big part of how we can reduce our personal carbon emissions from food. So what are your thoughts on plant-based diets?
Okay, now this is a tricky question. And, and I'll tell you why as I keep going. But at the same time, I'm going to apologize to you and some of your listeners in advance, because some of the things I'm going to say may be blunt and they may not sit well with what you believe. Okay, so I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first part is we're talking about plant-based diet, right? And then we'll talk about the sustainability part of it a little bit. Now, my belief through evidences and through my personal belief is that human as an animal, as a species, are carnivores or a mixed diet species. I don't know if you realize that we are the only species that chooses to eat pure plant-based diet, not out of biological needs. I hope I could explain it a little bit better. I haven't found a good phrase for it. But if you think about it, a cow eats grass as its main diet. That's what it naturally eats, right? So if human were designed that way, we would have naturally pursue or evolved into a pure plant eating society or a race, a species, if you will. The fact that we require a mixed diet, there's so many elements in animal-based food that's required for a human reproductive system, for human immune system. There are a lot of nutrients, if you think about it from a reproductive perspective, to grow a new baby. Right? The vitamins we need for this process are often lacking in plant-based diets. And hence, there are a lot of questions raised: is a pure vegan or vegetarian diet the best when a mother is preparing for conception and for pregnancy and for postpartum healing? And we're talking about nutrients such as choline, a type of B vitamin, but it was discovered way later than B vitamin, so it is given a different name. So choline, you find it in egg yolk, you find it in beef, right? There are very, very little sources in plant sources. Another arguable key component, the essential fatty acids, your DHA and EPA type of omega-3 fatty acids. Can you find them in plants? Yes. But the ability for a human to convert those nutrients into the usable form, DHA, it's very, very low. Where do we get them from? Fish, seafood, grass-eating meat, again, animal sources of food, right? B12, as you mentioned, where do we get it from? Where's the higher source? Again, eggs, liver, meat. And in pregnancy care, we almost always will have to supplement vegan or vegetarian-based diet mothers with B12 because there's just really no good source. So just from that perspective, I do think we need a little bit of everything in our diet. And when you said plant-based diet, then again, we can argue and say, are you looking at 100% plant-based, meaning vegan diet? There's no animal product whatsoever, no eggs, no dairy. Or you're looking at someone, let's say, okay, I eat 80% of my plate will be vegetable and grains and fruits, and I have 20% of animal product be it meat, be it seafood of your choice, be it egg and dairy and all that, that still provides a little bit of a balance. So from a nutrition perspective, that's my answer to you, right? Now, from the sustainability and environmental perspective, I think this will always be a big fight. And this will keep going on for a long time. Then a lot of questions that we need to ask ourselves is that about, number one, to me, food distribution. Are we producing too much food or eating too much food in certain communities and societies? Well, there are communities and societies that are completely lacking, right? So it goes into food industry as a whole. What are we producing? How are we producing them? I think with the amount of people that you've been speaking with, there are mixed views towards whether a plant-based diet or how agriculture is being done at the moment and how it impacts our community. Again, I think eventually we have to keep asking ourselves what the purpose is, or are we looking at a distribution problem? Are we looking at a production problem? Are we looking at a need problem? Or if we're looking at a commercial problem? Yeah.
I think that's an interesting and very critical perspective, which is very much needed in this space. The one thing that was really important that you mentioned was balance. There's a lot of mention on flexitarian diets and making sure you're getting different diverse kind of food types as part of your diet.
And also, if you take it a step forward, a lot of things that we talked about in health promotion are really at a public health perspective, meaning that the guidelines government have set are based on studies and evidences that could protect 95% of the healthy population. But how many people belong to that 95% healthy population at this point in terms of our lives, right? So when you look at the individuals, there is lifestyle difference, exposure difference, preferences, like and dislikes, gender, age, and most interestingly, and that's my next really big topic thing for me, is epigenetics and nutrigenetics. Epigenetic meaning, yes, you're giving a set of cells and DNA, but how do these DNAs express because of what you eat, because of the environmental toxins or substances, let's call them substances, because they can be good and bad, that you're exposed to. So twins with the exact same set of DNA may have completely different health presentations just because of that. Everybody's gut microbiota is different. So again, if you have the same set of DNA, your microbiota, which is influenced by how you live and your environment, what you eat, will drive you to have a different set of presentation of your health. So the individual variances are way larger than previously knew. So how do you gauge what's right for you? I mean, in functional medicine, we can do a lot of lab tests to figure out where you are at, but we'll bring it back to what we were talking about earlier. How do you gauge your own health? It's how you gauge how you perform, how you function, how you feel waking up every day, how you feel going to bed every day.
Yeah, I think that again goes back to how complicated and diverse the different kind of body compositions people have and really understanding that. Just going back to the sustainability point, I think it goes back to, as you mentioned, it's not that, for example, beef is inherently bad. It's just the systems right now that we're using to produce them are inherently bad for the planet. But in the interest of time, so you mentioned this a bit earlier as well on epigenetics and the role of the environment. So I want to switch the topic to talk more about pollution, which has been particularly mentioned in the context of, for example, seafood or even just microplastics in general making their way into food. So we're kind of basically polluting the environment and then eating everything that we're polluting. So it's like a vicious cycle. So what are your thoughts in terms of the element of nutrition and also eating well for the planet in the context of pollution?
I wish I had a magic bullet for you. But you did point out something really, really important. And it's actually, taking the nutritionist head aside, something I've always been discussing with my family is that humans are creating our environment, our surroundings, but we also have to feed off this ecosystem that we created and influenced. And where does it end? When do we get that break, right? So again, I'm going to answer it from two perspectives. As a nutritionist, yes, our fish contaminated? A lot of them are, unfortunately. Are the plants or even the fruits and vegetables that we grow in a lot of our hunting areas, especially in Asia and Southeast Asia, are they potentially contaminated and polluted? Are their nutrition values influenced? Yes, I will tell you, science does point to that. But on the other hand, they still offer a lot of the good nutrients, especially in this context. I will talk about the nutrients that are needed for our liver, for our bodies to detox and to process these unwanted substances in our body. So, for example, yes, we're looking at seafood that's being contaminated by mercury or other chemicals and toxins and many plastic waste, which creates a lot of EDCs, endocrine disruptors or endocrine disrupting chemicals that influences how our hormones work. And we talked at the beginning how important our hormones are. But at the same time, seafood and fish does provide also another mineral called selenium. And selenium is one of the mineral compounds that are needed in our body to bind to mercury and to minimize its effect. Our fruit and vegetables and colorful stuff that we found around us, like I've always talked about, also provides a lot of antioxidants that help our body fight the toxic and unwanted substances in our body. So if you think about a bucket with a few leaks, right? So yes, we're taking in all the substances around us. And bear in mind, unwanted substances don't just come from our environment, it comes from our own body too. We produce waste and we produce unwanted substances and toxins. So with all these substances coming into that bucket, imagine all your antioxidants, your vitamins, your minerals being those filtered. And then the waste goes away. So it's like a pipe. Water comes in, bucket, filter, unwanted stuff go away. So it's about that balance of how much is coming in, how much can you process, how much is going away. So if you think about it from that perspective, since we're not going to be, very few of us can say, I'm going to live out of this system, then all we can do is to make sure that we live in a way that keeps our body at its optimal state, that it can continue to process everything that we've generated for ourselves. But the second half of my answer is the part that's go again a little bit blunt, is that healthcare is a unfair industry. This is an industry where it's obvious where the ones that have resources would have better access to cleaner sources of living, less contaminated sources of food, and also better resources to everything that keeps life in a more protected manner, let's put it that way. There will be those with less resources that are limited in their options. So I do believe that at every phase in life or every structure, there are things that you can do to help build your own balance where you are. But bear in mind that it's unfortunately not an equal world.
That's really interesting, the part about detoxification. And I agree with you so much about the environmental justice problem, which doesn't even just apply to more vulnerable communities as a whole, but even on an individual level, going back to what you mentioned earlier about, for example, pregnant mothers or just women compared to men, like the gender differences in terms of how our bodies need certain nutrients. It's so nuanced, and there's such a need for more of that education and that awareness to go around. And unfortunately, yeah, there are so many barriers for communities around the world in terms of being able to be protected from these chemicals as well.
The good thing is we have more and more people like you being out there, bringing voices to people and creating education, creating platforms, creating exchanges of to share this and disseminate this. And That's why we
Oh,
celebrate you too.
thank you, Julina. That's really kind of you. Finally, kind of moving on to more an educational standpoint. What do you
Mhm.
think can be changed or improved to really ensure the next generation and more widely in society that there's a there's a better understanding of nutrition, how to eat well, and wellness more generally?
Okay. I will start with a quote actually from Mother Teresa, and I may not quote it 100% accurately, but the gist is that if you want to achieve world peace, you start with loving your family and those around you. And I would say the same thing when it comes to education or what we do with the education. I think at this point, it's not about not enough education. I think there are many, many organizations that are doing wonderful work and many individuals like your good self trying to bring the correct information out there. But the thing is, what do we do with those information or the education that we receive? Yes, we want to go out there and achieve great things that has huge impact and huge footprints in our community. But what are we doing with the people just around us? And I do believe to really create bigger change, it requires every one of us impacting. Number one, loving ourselves. So once you're able to achieve that, you're able to extend that to just the person next to you, to your family. Are you showing them or sharing with them the education or the impact, the changes you have in your life? And I do believe that's what's eventually going to change the world. So I kind of feel like needs to be changed is perhaps the reminder of telling everyone it's what you do every day matters. It's not only your next big project or the next job you get that's going to change the world. It's what you do in your everyday and how you lead your tribe to do that. So if there's anything to add into our education system, it's the opportunity to do and to lead by example.
And there's also that element, as you mentioned, of self-love, really having that awareness for yourself and the people around you. Because I think it's often easier to notice, for example, if someone else is struggling, and it's easier to be in a bit of a denial about ourselves, for example. That's definitely something that I've found and have really tried to like focus a lot more on. So the last question that I have is more linked to your work as a co-founder, which unfortunately we didn't have time to delve into, but that journey of being an entrepreneur is also one that is very challenging. So I want to know more about any advice you have in terms of wellness as an entrepreneur for anyone out there who's wanting to start a business or even just starting an initiative and embarking on a new project.
Keep learning. That's the biggest thing, especially in the space of wellness. Like I said, when I stepped out of school, my first job is the Ministry of Health Singapore in community education. Our job was to create health campaigns, education pamphlets telling people to eat fruit and vegetables, right? Science has changed so much since then. The way we talk about fat is different. The way we talk about sugar carbohydrates has changed so much. The amount of fruit we recommend in a person's diet has changed. So you got to understand that if you want to work in the space of wellness, this is a evolving, ever growing, and very, very young science comparing to everything else we know, comparing to building a plane or building a rocket. Okay? So there you believe in now may change in 5 years. Whatever I tell you now may change in 3 years. Right. So understand that if you decide to embark in a business or a space that is to promote health and wellness or help human beings, you have to keep learning. You have to keep evolving with time, making and always understand that it's such a complex thing in the body. So what I like to caution people about is also not to say that, okay, this is your one magic cure. Bear in mind the scale of things and always be humble and keep trying, keep going at it. It's a fascinating field.
Thank you so much, Julina, for joining
Uh,
me today to discuss so many interesting topics. It was so nuanced and so critical, and I really learned a lot. So thank you.
Thanks, Belinda.
Thank you to Sustainapod listeners for tuning in this week with us. We would love to hear from you about this episode, so let us know any questions and comments by messaging us on Instagram at sustainapod_GIH or email us at sustainapod@gmail.com. See you next time.